Hello, Chris Godinez, licensed professional counselor, also the host of We Need to Talk on every Sunday at noon Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions stated herein are mine and mine alone. They do not represent the ACA, the APA, or any other therapist for that matter. Boom, shakalaka, done. I am proud to be sponsored by BetterHelp, BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/Chris Godinez, which is an online counseling company. They set you up with online counselors. So if you are in the UK, if you are in Italy, if you are in France, if you are in India, if you are in any country that will allow the internet, don't get me started, you can get to betterhelp.com/Chris Godinez and fill out some questions, and then they will assign you a counselor here in the US. Of course, obviously there's going to be a time difference. You're going to have to figure out the times and everything like that. But given that I've been hearing a lot of stuff from people in the UK, especially saying, oh my God, the wait times are like 6 to 8 months to a year, I'm like, you know what? You can do this, get online and get with a counselor pretty much immediately. So also, if you're in a rural area and you don't like the counselor that's in your town and you don't want to have to drive 3 or 4 hours to find a different counselor, they will find one in your state, and they are all licensed, and they are all master's level or PhD level. So, and if you don't like them, you just fill out some more questions, say, hey, I don't like this person, get me somebody else, and they will put you with a different counselor in your state. So, all right, so answering some questions. Okay, so are narcissists sick, or are they just selfish trying to get what they want? Because I've heard a lot of people give the thing about, oh, they're mentally ill, they're sick. No, they are not. Mental illness, think of it this way. Mental illness means there is something chemically wrong going on in the system. With depression, right? It means that there's not enough serotonin in the system, dopamine, endorphins, neuroepinephrines, etc., to jack up the feel-good chemicals. There is chemically, physically something impeding the process of the brain to feel happy. With anxiety, there's too much cortisol. There's too much of the cortisol flooding the body, too much adrenaline flooding the body, and it's stopping the brain from functioning. So again, there is something physical, something chemical going on that needs to be helped, right? With a personality disorder, there is not. There is no drug on the face of the planet that is going to make these people behave normally. And what's going on is it's called a personality disorder because it's behavior. It's a behavior issue. It's not a mental health issue so much as it is a behavioral issue. And they do not, at least the narcissists, do not seek help and don't want to change. So are they sick? Well, spiritually, I think they got a problem. But as far as an actual illness, no, they are not mentally ill. They have a personality disorder. And it cannot be fixed by medication. It can only be fixed by, DBT. DBT is shown effective with borderline personality disorder. Minimal success in helping with narcissism, but there has yet to be anybody that has been cured from narcissism. And there's no known cases of narcissists who have been cured, that stopped being narcissists. So, yeah, don't fall for it when they're like, oh, you should feel sorry for them, they're sick. Well, they're sick and they're harming people, and in 9 times out of 10, they enjoy it. There's that sadistic component that they have. I hope that answers the question. So yeah, it is ego. They absolutely are doing it intentionally. It is on purpose. It is not an oops. It is not a, oh gosh, I didn't know that saying this horrible thing was going to hurt your feelings. No, it is absolutely done with malice of forethought. Absolutely. Aw, Ashley said, if you read these comments, thank you for these life-saving videos. Thank you so much. Well, you're welcome. I enjoy doing them, and I enjoy interacting with you guys. I enjoy answering your questions. It's a lot of fun for me to do this, and I'm so happy when I hear that I've helped. So that's awesome. Thank you, Ashley. Oh, I just got the cup. I love it. Thank you so much for your note. Oh, you're welcome. Okay, what is enabling and why is it bad? So enabling is when we help somebody, or we think we're helping somebody, to continue a bad behavior. So you hear this a lot in addiction, right? Don't enable an alcoholic, don't enable a drug addict. So enabling is when you think that you're helping the person, but in fact, you're harming them with your help. So this is all kind of tangled up in codependency and everything else like that. In dealing with addiction, when a parent sees a child failing or struggling or failing or both with an addiction, they think they're helping them by saving them. So they'll swoop in and they'll take them to a rehab and they'll do the 28-day, and then the kid gets out and within a month or two, they're back using again. They swoop in, they take them to a different rehab. Kid gets out, they swoop in. I mean, it's like rinse and repeat, right? And part of what's driving that behavior on the part of the parents is that they are unwilling to allow their children to reach rock bottom, you know, and they're unwilling for them to, quote unquote, fail. And unfortunately, all that does is it teaches the kid, oh, I can just keep using, because they haven't learned their own lesson and they don't know how to help it themselves. They're relying on somebody else to save them. So that's very codependent behavior. So enabling is not good. Enabling, as far as abuse is concerned, is when the flying monkeys turn a blind eye to the abuse, when they turn a blind eye to the things that the abuser is doing to the target of abuse, or they help it, you know, they give them access to the target of abuse. They tell them where they're going to be. They tell them, you know, things that the abuser needs to know in order to continue stalking them or whatever. So that's enabling. It's dangerous and it's bad, you know, because the abuser is just going to keep doing what they're doing. So again, I think there's a lot of confusion as to honestly helping and enabling and codependency. So oftentimes when parents do not allow their children to fail, it is a codependent thing because they make it mean something about them. Oh, I'm a terrible parent if I allow this child to fail. Okay, well, how do babies learn how to walk? They fall on their ass, sometimes on their heads, and they learn balance that way. If you've got a helicopter parent that's not allowing that child to learn balance, that kid's going to have a really hard time walking. They're going to have a really hard time finding balance. It's the same thing in addiction. So you've got to be really careful when you're offering help. Are you doing it for them, or are you doing it to I never could say that word, to help your own guilt? You know, is that why you're doing it? So enabling is when you are doing something that ultimately hurts the other person, but it looks like it's helping the other person, or you think it's going to help the other person, but really you're coming from a place of it's going to make me feel better, and that's why I'm enabling them. So enabling is not helpful because they don't learn the lesson, you know, they don't learn how to stay sober. They don't learn how to stop abusing. They don't learn that, oh gosh, there's consequences for my actions. So yeah, it's no bueno. So that's why enabling is bad, because it doesn't allow the person to learn. Okay. What should I ask a new therapist? Well, it depends on why you're going to see them. So you want to ask them general questions like, you know, how long have you been in business? Where did you get your degree from? What's your specialty? What's your modality? What do you use? So when I give my spiel, when somebody calls and says, hey, I want to make an appointment, and it's so funny because it's like they won't know me from Adam, and they'll be like, you know, I just need to make an appointment. Okay, well, let me tell you a little bit about what I do so I make sure that we're a good fit, because I am not the therapist for everybody. I am incredibly blunt, you know, and I use a lot of humor, and I also swear like a sailor, you know, so it's like, so I got to let people know that. So I'll go, okay, well, I use CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. Sessions are 45 minutes long. I use a lot of humor. I tend to swear like a sailor. If that's a problem, let me know. I'll try not to drop the F-bomb so much. I don't take insurance. I do a sliding scale, you know, so you tell the person general, you know, the general information about how you run things. And of course now, you know, I'm only doing online, and if you need to see somebody in person, I can refer you, you know, that kind of thing. So you want to ask the therapist the things that are specific to the things that you are looking for. So one of the big things that I hear from survivors of abuse is they often get with therapists that don't know their from a hole in the ground. Seriously, like they do not know about CPTSD. They don't understand that you can have post-traumatic stress disorder and not be a veteran. So I had one client that was just severe CPTSD, trouble sleeping, the whole thing. Arizona had just gotten legalized marijuana, And so I said, look, maybe you should try that. That's a possibility. Think about that. Talk to your doctor. Let's see what they say. And so the doctor agreed. The doctor was like, yes, let's do this. I think this is a good route that's not heavy, harsh chemicals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the client went to one of the dispensaries or one of the clinics to get signed up, and the woman sitting at the desk, who I sincerely hope has been fired, basically looked at her and said, "You're not a veteran. You can't have PTSD." And I'm sitting here going, are you a therapist? Oh, you're not? How about you shut the hell up? So do you see where I'm going with that? So it's like, so if anyone tells you after having been through a post-traumatic stress situation, an abuse situation, that you couldn't possibly have PTSD because you're not a veteran, fire them. Get a new therapist. So you want to ask questions like, well, what's your experience in this? Now, for me, I have personal experience, obviously, because my dad was abusive. So, hello, what's wrong with your dad? Available on Kindle and also available on Amazon. And I also read it on Audible. So, and it's also available on my site, chrisgodinas.com. Wow, that was an ad I was not planning for. But, you ask them, it's like, what's your experience with this? What do you know about this? What's your training in trauma? What's your training in PTSD? What's your training? Where did you, and a lot of the training that I got in all of this is I had to read every single book I could get my hands on, and I took every CEU I possibly could, continuing education unit. Every time the ACA had one of their conferences that was about intimate partner violence. That's what they're calling it now. Instead of domestic violence, they're calling it intimate partner violence. So I've taken as much training and much CEUs as I possibly could. I've read every single book I can get my hands on. I've talked with other clinicians. I've talked with other life coaches, So you want to make sure that what you're going in to see them for is something they know something about. So let's say that you're depressed and you need to talk to somebody about depression. Okay, well, what do you know? Where did you get your training in depression? Where's your training at? How much do you know? How long have you been doing this? Do you know what it's like to work with somebody that's been the target of intimate partner violence or whatever it is the issue? So feel free to ask your possible clinician as many questions as you need to. Somebody actually sent me an email not too long ago asking, how many clients a week do you have? Are you going to be available to see me? Which is a valid point. Sometimes I actually have to tell new people, I'm sorry, I'm not taking any new clients. I'm absolutely booked to the max, So especially with the beginning of the pandemic, it's like I was booked like 40 clients a week every week, until recently. So glad that's letting up. But yeah, so you want to know, am I going to be able to get in to see you? Is this a possibility, or are you just booked out, weeks and weeks and weeks in advance? So yeah, you want to ask your clinician a bunch of questions, and then what I will do is, find out generally what they're looking for, because sometimes they want things that I am not specialized in or that I'm not really good at. So, because I'm not good at everything. So, for example, somebody will call and say, well, I want family therapy. And I will be, let me refer you out, because I don't like family therapy. I don't, especially if there's a narcissist involved, because it's dangerous for the people who are not narcissists. So I will refer them out to a DBT therapist that can spot that and hopefully keep the family safe. Or if they want me to work with a small child, obviously because of my mouth, I'm not going to be working with a small child because that little kid will be coming home and swearing up a storm. So yeah, so, those types of things. So you ask, you talk and you ask as many questions as you need. And the clinician should be asking you questions and you should be asking the clinician questions until you're satisfied that, yeah, I think this might be a good fit. And if it's not a good fit, do not feel afraid to call up and cancel the appointment and say, I'm sorry, you know what? This is just not a good fit. Can you give me a referral? Okay, I will give referrals. So, yeah, because honestly, it's like, just like how we're not a match for everybody in the world, I'm not a match for every single client. Not every client is a match for me. So it's good to ask as many questions as you possibly can. How long is it normal to grieve? Oh boy. Okay. So in our society, the grief has got this weird stigma to it because it's like, oh, well, you should be done grieving in a week. What? No. And when I worked at the Dougie Center, so Dougie Center and the New Song Center are children's grief clinics. One is in Oregon, one is here in Scottsdale. And I had a woman who lost her son to violence, gang violence, unexpected. And her boss literally told her to get over it in 2 weeks. Like, stop crying, stop being sad, you know, you're a downer. And I'm sitting there going, there's a special circle of hell for you, Mr. Man. You know, seriously, because they wanted, the corporate world wanted her to be zippity-doo-dah like she used to be and get over it in 2 weeks. You do not get over the loss of a child in 2 weeks. You just do not. Grief, normal grief, okay, takes a whole year, because you're having to get through all of the firsts, you know, the first, I don't know, Easter, Memorial Day, July 4th, Labor Day, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, anniversary of the death, birthdays. You have to get through all the firsts. And you're just barely surviving in that first years. If it was a normal grief, like if it was a child that you lost, or if it was somebody you loved that lost. If it was grief that was complicated, so complicated grief is when the person who died you maybe didn't have a really great relationship with. That can take upwards of 3 years, because the first year you're going through all the first and you're processing, right? The second year you're moving them to a new place. And the third year you're dealing with all the anger you have at them. So yeah, it's complicated. It is a complicated grief, especially when an abuser dies. You know, if the abuser was a parent, if the abuser was a lover, if the abuser was a boss, if the abuser was a friend, you know, it's complicated because you've got conflicting emotions. You loved them, but you also hated the way they treated you. You loved them, but you also hated what they did, you know, and there's all these emotions with it. So it's complicated grief. And so oftentimes with targets of abuse, the grief is very complicated because sometimes the abuser doesn't die. They just show you who they are. Oof, oof. Because you thought you knew them and they mirrored you. Oh, I'm just like you. I'm just like you. I'm just like you. So you fell in love with them. And then the mask drops. They show you who you are. You get out. They're still alive. They're still walking around out there. But you're having to grieve the loss of somebody that's still alive. And that's a complicated grief. And it takes about 3 years. It does. It really does take about 3 years to stop thinking about them, to stop wishing that they would change or hoping that they would call or, you know, whatever, or get over the Hoovers or whatever is going on. So yeah, so grief, complicated grief takes 3 years. A normal grief without any complications, about a year. Because generally once we get to the 1 year mark, we've gone through all of that firsts kind of thing, and now we're moving them into a different place in our heart, and we're starting to heal. But with complicated grief, it takes about 3 years to get to that point. Whether they were abusive and they're dead, or whether they were abusive and they just showed you who they were and you left. So yeah, it's tough, guys. It's tough. Okay. Why did you become a therapist? Oh my gosh. Well, again, hate to say this, but you can read my book. What's wrong with your dad? My dad was abusive. My dad was crazy. He was an opiate addict and an alcoholic, and he was very hurtful and harmful to everyone in the family. No one is untouched by him. And as I went through my young adulthood working in the movie industry, I realized how messed up people were and that I could do a lot more helping them getting a degree and getting people out of abusive relationships than I could being a hairdresser or being an actor. So, you know, there that is. And it was so funny because the ACA had a whole CEU about drama therapy and how therapists that have a background in theater arts are actually more helpful, which made me laugh, than therapists that haven't had a background in theater arts, because we tend to be more expressive and more authentic and more willing to go with the emotions. So I thought that was pretty cool. I was just like, yes, theater majors unite, you know, so that was pretty cool. So I got into it because my dad was obviously very abusive, and I realized out of my experiences and watching what actors were going through in LA, which was incredibly messed up, that I could help other people and I could help them get through it and maybe turn around and also help other people. So that's kind of why I became a therapist. But I worked on myself first, guys. That's one question I get a lot. It's like, oh, I've got all these family issues and I want to become a therapist. Wrong. You've got all these family issues. Go do your own therapy. Go lie on the couch and talk about your mother and your father first. Get that stuff nailed down tight, because if you don't, and you decide, oh, I'm going to turn around and help somebody else, first of all, you got codependency going on like nobody's business. 2, you're going to have transference and countertransference happening, and you do not want that to happen. 3, you're not going to be able to help them because you'll be so triggered all the time. So if you can get your own stuff nailed down first and then go get your master's degree or your doctorate or whatever you want to do, then that's great. So that's the best way to do that. People who go into these programs and go, I'm here to figure myself out, I just want to pull my hair out. I'm just like, you're here for the wrong reasons. You need to be here to help other people, not to help yourself. You should have already done that. That should have been already done. So there is that. Okay. Why do malignant narcissists punish us? Is it because we don't live up to their expectations? Well, yes and no. So malignant narcissists punish us, especially if we're not automatically compliant with their expectations. Yes, so that is part of it. The other half of it is you have to realize everything's on a spectrum. So down here is traits of, further down is the malignant dark triad. When they get to the malignant dark triad point, they're usually sadistic and they enjoy it. So they punish because it's a power trip for them. It gives them endorphins, dopamines, norepinephrines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all the feel-good chemicals, because it makes them feel powerful. So if they can harm somebody and make them cry, that makes them feel like God, seriously. And that is part of the reason why they do it. Remember, they want us dead. They want us dead. I'm not kidding you. They either want us to kill ourselves or they want to be the instrument of us dying somehow, especially with the ones that go into the physical violence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, they punish us because we're not perfect. They punish us because we hold them accountable. They punish us because we call them out on their stuff, which is why it's so dangerous to do so if you're still in the relationship. And it's dangerous to do so when you're out of the relationship because they're crazy. So, yeah. They also enjoy punishing. They do. They get off on it. Like, seriously, it's like a sexual thing for them to be able to inflict pain, and they get that recognition smile. You know, my dad would hit me sometimes or do something horrible to me, and then he would just get this sick look on his face, like he knew what he was doing was wrong, and he didn't care because he liked it. So yeah, they do get off on it. So yeah, absolutely. They're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And they do it because we don't live up to their expectations, and they also do it because they just enjoy it. So, yeah. What do you mean everything is on a spectrum? Okay, so literally every single mental health issue is on a spectrum. You can have traits of, so let's take borderline, okay? So borderline traits of would be like the quiet borderlines. They tend to hurt themselves. They tend not to focus it outside. It's more internalized, and they harm themselves. So there's traits of, which means there's less psychotic thinking. So borderline personality disorder borders on psychotic thinking. It also has traits of all the major personality disorders. When you see somebody in a full-blown borderline rage, they will exhibit, I mean, seriously, you could literally sit there and go, oh, paranoia, oh, narcissism, oh, this, oh, that. You know, they will literally exhibit every single trait. So, when they're down at the traits of, it's almost like fleas, like with a narcissist, you know, the fleas that we get when we're around a narcissist, the bad behaviors that we don't really want, but we find ourselves acting out. So there's enough room, there's enough space, mentally speaking, for a therapist to get in and help somebody who's down here at the traits of point. As the person slides down the spectrum, and this goes with borderlines and this goes with narcissists, as they get closer and closer to malignancy, dark triad, right? As they slide down this way, there's less and less room to actually work with them. The ego becomes so great that there's no space to work with them. They don't want to change. They don't want to learn. They don't want to, especially in the borderlines when they get to the witch and the queen. So there's the quiet borderlines tend to take it out on themselves. Hermit borderlines tend to be the martyrs. You know, I did all this for you and you never write, you never call, that kind of thing. The queen, the witch is, no, the queen is the controller, very controlling, wants to control all the chess pieces. And then the witch is just sadistic, enjoys screaming, enjoys the rages, enjoys it, enjoys inflicting terror on the people that have to hear them. And remember, borderlines can be male or female. I really hate it when people are like, oh, women are borderline and men are narcissists. Nope, wrong. I have seen some horrific male borderlines and some horrific female narcissists. So yes, it can be both. So spectrum. So with the narcissism, traits of would be like haughty attitude, kind of big man on campus, you know, that kind of thing. As it slides down and it gets closer and closer to antisocial personality disorder, also known as psychopathy, Machiavellianism, which is control freak, which would be kind of akin to the queen in borderline, and then narcissism. Once they get down there, there is no space. You cannot work with them. They don't want to change. They enjoy it. Exactly, you know. And again, everything's on a spectrum. Everything is on a spectrum. You can have, you know, situational depression. You can have full-blown major depression. You can have, you know, traits of this or traits of that. You know, and things can be comorbid, meaning they exist together. You can be narcissistic and have major depression. You can be, you know, it's like the combinations are endless. So that's what I mean by traits of, or spectrum, you know. So traits of means that it doesn't match the full-blown criteria. So in both borderline and narcissism, I think it's 9 traits of, or, you know, what am I trying to say? Behaviors that you have to have in order to be diagnosed as those conditions. And traits of would be anything less than 5. So 5 is full blown. So if they have 4 strong traits of, 3 traits of, you know, that type of thing. So anyway, there's that. Okay, how are we doing on time? Ooh, I got a few minutes. Okay. Why are we so addicted to the intermittent positive rewards? Because it's like training a dog, and it's done on purpose, and it's called trauma bonding. Trauma bonding. So they do this in POW camps. So Vietnam War, they would be nice to the prisoners and then beat them. They would be kind and then withhold food. They would, you know, give them stuff and then take it away. So intermittent positive rewards is how we train a dog. So just like you give a dog a treat every other time or every third time, pretty soon the dog goes, oh, I got a treat when I sat. Oh, I'm going to sit again. Okay. And so the dog learns just with a hand signal to start sitting because it's waiting for the treat. And that's what intermittent positive rewards is. So it's, you don't get a treat every single time. Trauma bonding is the same, and it goes a step further in that they, like I said, they will abuse, hit, harm, hurt, scream at, rage, keep up at night, and then the very next day, oh, I love you. Oh, you know, let me buy you flowers. Let me buy you a big trip. Let me, you know, whatever. And so there's a reward. And so pretty soon we start living for the reward, okay? And it's incredibly addictive. That is trauma bonding. That is totally trauma bonding, and it is incredibly addictive. And that's where brainwashing comes in. That's where the gaslighting comes in. That's where the, you know, because here's the thing. People who love you do not torture you. People who love you do not intermittently like you. They like you all the time. They don't do this, I love you, I love you, I love you, I hate you. Hate, 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 love. They don't do that. It's like you're secure. You're secure. You know that you're loved. But trauma bonders, abusers, they do that intermittent positive rewards. And it's addictive because our brain gets spiked up every single time. How many times have we heard, man, when it was good, it was great. But when it was bad, it was scary, awful. Well, that's the intermittent positive rewards. And so our brains start living for that adrenaline, dopamine rush when they're kind to us, when they're good to us, when they're rewarding us. So it's incredibly addictive, and that is trauma bonding. So that is Stockholm Syndrome. So you definitely want to be aware of that. A healthy, normal relationship is not peaks and valleys. It is not. It's more, you know, little things. It's little. It's constant. It's consistent. Behavior is constant and consistent. It's not 1 minute I love you and the next minute I hate you. It's not. So if you're finding that in your relationship, that is a huge red flag. Okay, I am going to stop that. There's actually 10 more questions, but okay, I'm gonna answer the other questions the next round. So This next week on We Need to Talk with Chris Godinez, I am going to be discussing codependency versus actual helping and enabling, because I think this is something we need to talk about because people don't understand the differences. All right, so that's what I'm going to be talking about. So don't forget, if you are looking for a therapist online, BetterHelp with a p.com/Chris Godinez. I will put that down in the description. You guys have a great week, and I will talk to you on Sunday. Bye.